Reddit, what is your weirdest breakup story? Story 1. I was dating this guy in high school and he dyed his hair cheetah print. Something about that dye job changed him. Not over time, instantly. He went from being a normal guy to I am too alternative for words and I wanted no part of it. At lunch I had to sit him down and have a talk with him about it. I told him that he was kind of acting like a D, and maybe he was letting this new look get to his head. He took my hand and said I needed to accept him for the new person he was, which I guess was a cheetah or something, so I told him I had to set him free. He looked at me with these knowing eyes, and that ended the most awkward 4-day relationship I have ever had. Story 2. I had a friend in college who was dating a girl who had progressively gotten weirder and weirder. I knew the guy for 3 years and near the end of the second year she had begun to hang out with us. We had a few classes together and she would occasionally wait outside the class for us, and occasionally try to peek in the windows, and occasionally write things on them, and occasionally straight up interrupt the professor by saying/doing things outside the windows of classes. Yeah. Not crazy at all. Well, around this time, he finally realized that he had found himself a certifiably crazy whack job. The only problem was that he followed his D around like the needle on a magnetic compass. And since this girl would sleep with him, he never bothered to try to break it off. Until I get this frantic call in the middle of the night. The following is a more or less of what happened. Scared to shit friend, a CSF, buck dude something bad happened. Me what? It is 2 a.m. and I was sleeping. SCSF, she's pregnant man, I bucking got her pregnant. Me why? How? Are you stupid? Note I was and still am happily married, so the idea of having a baby wasn't absurd to me. I have one and another on the way now, but am having one with her, yeah no. A CSF, I don't know man, we've been using condoms and everything, but I guess they still fail sometimes? We've never had one break. Me, what are you going to do? A CSF, I don't bucking know, oh shit she's coming back by. Well at this point there's not much I can do, I go back to sleep. Fast forward through the week. I don't see him or her at all. He actually missed an exam, it was one of those take it now or the final counts more, so I wasn't terribly worried about him, yet. Finally I hear from him again and it turns out that she's not really pregnant. She had gotten her period or they had taken a few negative tests. Some combo of both. He was quite elated when he told me this, so basically the phone conversation went. Me hey man, was you? STSF omigo dwebaking daja de balethier. Me okay then. Skip forward another few days. For some reason they are still together. Oh wait, I remember the reason. Sex. So I was at his place, because we were studying for an upcoming quiz and he asks me to look at something. I initially thought it was going to be a picture of a D or some stupid prank, so I was a little cautious at first. He shows me a condom. At this point I'm like 99% sure that this is some kind of prank. He asks me to take a really close look at it and sure enough I can see several infinitesimally small holes in it. Curious, we examined the remainder of the condoms that he'd kept in the nightstand beside the bed. Almost every single one had at least 1 or 2 holes clean through them. Turns out crazy GF had wanted to get pregnant really bad so that she could lock down my buddy. She had heard some ingenious story from one of the local radio stations about a lady poking holes in condoms to get pregnant, and so apparently she'd been doing that for a month or 2. She thought she struck gold a week or so ago, but apparently she was just late or something. He literally broke up with her on the phone right there and moved all of her stuff outside, and we proceeded to get a new lock put on his apartment. New door handle and everything, caused a few problems with the complex later, but that's another story for another time. Done right? Nope. No way. We had a class together that let out at 7:50 p.m. We'd usually park in the same lot and shoot the shit on the way out of that class. He had scored a better spot than me and was thus much closer to the front than I was. From a good distance off, maybe 200 feet, we could see that something was seriously wrong with his car. The windshield was smashed. Once we got closer we could see a hole clean through it. The windshield. Not a window. The actual windshield. In the hole was placed a, terrifyingly accurate, voodoo doll. It had his hair on it and everything. There wasn't anything else left with it, so when he called the cops they basically couldn't do much. Her fingerprints were probably, rightfully so, all over the car, so that wouldn't prove anything, and they told us that since he had insurance this wouldn't cost him anything to fix. Which was correct. We reported her to the university police and it turns out that she wasn't a student anymore, at least. She'd been a student 10 years ago and had been lying to my buddy about her age. We were in our very early 20s and she'd been saying she was as well. She was 31. She had been kicked out of the school several years back for trying to blackmail a professor into passing her. I never saw her again and I don't know if STSF ever did either, but I do know that he kept that voodoo doll and hung it from his rearview mirror once he got it back from the cops. Story 3. Found paternity papers in my wife's car. Kid wasn't mine. She didn't even want to have a conversation, she just packed her shit and left. We are divorced now, edited for spelling. Story 4. Once a woman broke up with me over a very weird conversation that simply had not ever occurred. She was making references to it. The conversation was apparently over the telephone. I had called her at work. I was dumbfounded. I told her that I didn't remember any of this, that I did not even speak with her that day. She refused to believe me and broke up anyway. Just to be certain I wasn't capable of completely forgetting an entire conversation, a couple weeks later I checked my phone bill since her work was long distance and would have been itemized. A call to her work number at the day she said it happened wasn't there, nor were there any calls to her work in the prior 3 days. Maybe she dreamed it? Maybe someone called posing as me? No, I did not pursue it any further. Leave crazy alone. Story 5. One of my high school friends had a problem with another guy at high school. Call my friend Mike, and the other guy Joe. This was back in 80 or 81, so three-way calling was considered high-tech back then. Joe had an argument with his girlfriend Jill at school. They left school angry that day, but still gave each other an angry I love you. Mike, using his unheard-of superpower of three-way calling, called up Joe, and then called Jill. He removed the microphone from his old-style telephone so no one could hear him. The conversation went like this. Joe, hello? Jill, hello? Joe, why did you call me? Jill, I didn't call you, I'm still mad at you. You called me. After a few more angry words, they hung up. To make a long story short, Mike kept calling them both, and they escalated their accusations, and got into a more serious fight over the phone. Then they broke up. As far as I know, they never got back together. Mike told me the story after high school, as I was joining the military. I haven't seen Mike again in over 20 years. Story 6. Girl broke up with me. Next day showed up at my door bawling her eyes out wanting to get back together. I obviously said no. She wasn't very mentally stable. Next day at school came to tell me she had a new boyfriend and didn't care about me anymore. We dated for 2 weeks. Story 7. I started going out with a girl in my first year of uni who at some point after the initial happy period became absolutely insane. She was breaking up with me pretty much every day, public screaming at me, etc. So I told her that if she broke up with me again then that would be it for good. So she doesn't do it for a few weeks, at which point I'm thinking actually I don't really want to be with this girl. Eventually she goes crazy at me again, says that's it, you're dumped. Realizes what she said and goes white as a sheet. As she starts saying I didn't mean to say it, I just went oh sorry, no backsies. And left. Story 8. My ex dumped me because she had dreams of me cheating on her, but in reality I wasn't cheating at all. She would spend the day being a total bitch for something I never did. She would give me the cold shoulder and she won't let me hug or kiss her. Eventually she dumped me and claims the dreams were reoccurring, so it has to mean I'm cheating on her. I'm happy that's over. She was getting pretty crazy. Story 9. I was engaged and went away for the summer to work at a school in Central America. The whole time, I tried to call my fiancée, but we only connected a few times. On the day I returned, I had a layover in Houston on my way back to Portland. While sitting at my terminal, I was paged over the intercom to pick up the nearest white courtesy phone. So, I ambled over and was connected, and it was my finance, paging me, at the airport, to tell me he couldn't pick me up in Portland because he'd fallen in love with another woman. That happened. Our airport breakup was the last time I spoke to him. Story 10. Alright, so this occurred during my junior high years. Just think early awkward preteens. Anyways, I'm riding the bus home with my girlfriend and we were awkwardly holding hands and then her stop comes up. She looks at me, grabs my other hand, kisses my cheek, says, "You are a cage, and I'm a bird. This is over." And then she walks away, and that was the last time I conversed with her. If you made it this far, please consider pressing the subscribe and like button. Now continue to the video. Story 11. So I was dating a girl that was the friend of my buddy's GF, she lived far away and I couldn't drive yet. Her friend brought her down and we would go on dates together. My buddy and his GF broke up. So we did too. Story 12. I was dating a guy, and I ended it because I just wasn't ready to get as serious as he wanted to be, and I didn't want to lead him on, buck me, right? Anyways, I tell him in person, I just can't be serious. He goes and posts something on Reddit, complaining about me. Apparently I had horrible parents, my poor mother is in a wheelchair due to severe MS, so she isn't always very happy, and that I complained that he wore flip-flops and jeans. He took me on a date once, to a nice place, and wore flip-flops and I had just noted it wasn't appropriate attire. Needless to say, I saw the post, it was awkward for him. Story 13. In high school I broke up with a guy while I was at work. I worked at a video store and he came in to talk and we broke up. I got paid to break up with him. Story 14. Was dating this guy a couple years ago that I had met at a friend's party. We had gone out a few times and since we were both working a lot I only saw him Friday nights. We had slept together a couple of times. Anyway, on the night where I was supposed to have slept over for the third time, he suddenly gets all weird on me. First, we have dinner and it is just okay. Conversation seems a bit strained. Then we decide to go back to his place and have some cocktails, so we stop at a market to get some mixers. While we're in the store, he suddenly remembers it's Ramadan, so maybe he shouldn't drink. I should mention we live in Turkey. I thought that he was kidding because he bought the mixers and ice anyway. So we head back to his place. He proceeds to ask me what kind of cocktail I want and announce that he won't be drinking with me. That's weird and I don't want to drink alone, so I decline and we start watching a movie. I'm pretty annoyed at this point. I can't really remember how it started, but he said something really sissed about women not being able to drive. At first I thought he was kidding, but no. Then he started talking shit about how women can't do anything as well as men, and why aren't there more women painters and poets and artists if women are so smart? Seriously. This was an educated, modern guy, went to the best university in the country, etc., and he really seems to think he has a good point? I remember reminding him that maybe there would have been more accomplished women in history if they hadn't all been so busy cooking and dying in childbirth. We argued for a while, then I just got so disgusted I decided to go home. It was 11:30 p.m. and he didn't even offer to walk with me the short distance to the minibus stop. Any decent Turkish guy would do that. And I never contacted him or heard from him again. My guess is that he wasn't interested in seeing me anymore and couldn't bring himself to just tell me honestly that he wasn't feeling it. Meh. Anyway, it was good to learn that he was wildly cissed and kind of religious. Not interested in that at all, so no big loss. Story 15. Tried to break up with my girlfriend and kick her out of my house. She kicked her foot through my French door, cutting herself, and she began to cry. I ended up having to call the police because she went crazy and they gave her an option of going to her mom's house or to jail. She chose jail. Haven't seen her since. Story 16. My little sister's former grandmother, my parents were appointed as legal guardians, pulled something similar recently. She broke her restraining order by confronting my dad and little sister at church and went nuts spouting all kinds of shit in the middle of a crowd. The police detained her and took her outside. They gave her that same choice, go home or go to jail. Unfortunately, she was too stupid to shut up and go home, so she got hauled off to jail. It was and still is a bucked up situation all around. Story 17. Caught my ex-wife bucking my friend in a public toilet. I had no idea they were both there. It was so freaky. It was years ago now, so I'm over it, but it devastating at the time, and such a weird chance meeting. Story 18. My boyfriend of 3 months got a call from his ex-roommate. He said that she found out he moved on with a girl and tried to kill herself. We found out she took 8 ibuprofen, so she didn't try that hard. He took me home in the middle of a date to go meet her at the hospital. Never called me back, wouldn't answer texts, ignored emails. I could have driven to his house and yelled at him, but I can take a hint. He probably got back with his crazy ex, and if that's the case, he's stupid too and they are a match made in heaven. Story 19. I just graduated high school and was leaving for college in a few months. My girlfriend was a year younger and we kind of knew we would break up when I left. It wasn't anything we talked about, we just kind of knew. Anyways, I was at her friend's house for a bonfire/barbecue type thing and we decide to go for a walk. I decide this is the time to make a clean end as we are sitting on the side of the road down the street from her friend's house. We both agree this is it, and kind of wish each other well. Then she leans forward and kisses me. Thing is, she doesn't stop kissing me, and in a few minutes she's got my D in her mouth, giving me the craziest blowjob of my life right there on the side of the road. I remember saying something like, "You don't have to do this." And her muffled response of, "I know, I want to." That was it. I finished, we never hooked up again. I guess she just loved sucking my cock. Story 20. Not a romance, but a best friend. Her parents were a little unstable, and both of us helped one another through high school and our various abusive situations. Best friend I ever had before the age of 18. She was a girl, I was a guy, but the relationship was 100% platonic. One day she called me and said that she was never going to see me again. I was stunned. I asked why. "You are." And she paused, like she was reading something, Sigh Company. Logically, damaging to me. Yes. That's why. She wasn't stupid or anything, she knew what those words meant, but it wasn't her normal manner of speech. It sounded like a cue card. I wondered if she was sending me some kind of secret signal, but we didn't have an established protocol for that. "You need to pick up your things," like we shared, as friends, I mean. From my mom. I was really confused, but any attempts to figure it out were lost when she hung up on me. So a few days later, I showed up, and her mom gave me a box of my stuff. Some of it was missing, and some of it was not anything I ever owned, like some toys, books, and things. Her mom seemed confused why this was happening, but said her daughter gave her this box and I was not to come in the house. Some of this isn't mine," I started to say. "Well, just take it. I don't want any part of this, this is between you and her." Okay. I mean, I was devastated. I lost my best friend for a while, but eventually moved on. Months later, I was working at a science fiction convention, and was surprised she was there. She looked weird. She was happy to see me, as if nothing had ever happened. She mentioned she had a boyfriend, and I felt relieved. I mean, someone was taking care of her. I know she had confidence issues finding a boyfriend, and when I worried about who was going to be there for her when she was upset about her life, I suddenly felt, oh, she has someone. It was like a form of closure. I was really genuinely happy for her. But I didn't really want to re-establish a friendship with her because after a few months, I really had moved on and had different friends. But I was nice and friendly, and so was she. For a few moments here and there, I realized how much I missed her as a friend. But now she was acting really odd. For one thing, she asked if there was a hotel room where her and her boyfriend could have sex. I mean, she just right out asked that. I said I was sharing a room with a bunch of other convention workers, so I didn't know. I said I could ask around, but felt kind of used, I guess? She was very appreciative, stating that they had a great and active sexual relationship, and again, I thought, wow, that is so cool. Finally, you got laid. And before I did, heh. But then she kept talking about it. And I was getting creeped out. Like, TMI, girl. When we were friends, we talked about sex, but not like this. I thought, maybe it's because neither one of us had a relationship. Later on, she asked me about it again, stating she was super horny. I asked if her boyfriend knew anyone, because I didn't, and she started to get upset. I also asked to meet this guy, out of curiosity, but he was always somewhere else. At some point, I tried to politely remind her that her impatient desperation was a bit off-putting, and I was working at this convention and had other things to do. Well, she got even more pissed off, saying, I thought you were a friend, and I said, I thought you said you never wanted to see me again because I was psychologically damaging to you. Well, then she got mad and walked off. Reopened a lot of scars, that did, but I busied myself with work. I didn't see her again, but weeks later, some mutual friends of ours said she was telling people I forced her to masturbate, or something like that, and when they asked, WTF does that mean? She got mad at them and walked off. Years later, my wife said that perhaps she had a crush on me, and couldn't deal with it. There was never any boyfriend. That seems a little arrogant, but maybe. I heard through the grapevine her life didn't go so well after high school, dropped out of college, married an abusive guy, and became an alcoholic. But at some point, she turned her life around, and now is a professor, which seems far more fitting for the best friend I knew back then. Still, I don't think I want to see her again. That whole thing was just weird. TLDR, best friend I ever had as a teenager got weird on me, may have made up a boyfriend when she realized I moved on and she regretted severing our platonic relationship. Story 21. Not too weird, but humorous in a way. I was in communications class in school. A class where we learned pointless shit like how to write reports and such using MS Word. It was kind of the we don't have a proper computing class, so do this instead subject. Anyway, the computers had remote monitoring stuff on them that permitted teachers to spy on your screen, lock keyboard and mouse, and project your screen onto the overhead projector for all the world to see. I was aware of this, but always risked checking my emails anyway. One fine morning, I go to check my emails. See one from the girlfriend at the time. Ooh, shiny. So I click on it and start reading. I am just reading the last few lines, in shock, processing what I have just read. Spoiler, it was the breakup email. She knew I checked my emails and thought it was less awful than a text/phone call, when the mouse stops working. I see the projector blink into life, displaying the Hewlett-Packard logo, and that sadistic bastard of a teacher is obviously about to K up my heartbreak for all to see. I have mere seconds. I did the only logical thing, and violently ripped the power and network cables from the back of my desktop and left. TLDR, got broken up with by email. Checked email in class. Narrowly avoided having it shown to the whole class. Story 22. My first boyfriend was the actual worst. He was a total piece of shit, very emotionally and sometimes physically abusive. He moved 45 minutes away to live with his dad a year into our relationship. No a big deal, not far, still stayed with his mom most weekends. So after a year and a half of being with him, he calls me up one day and starts telling me about this girl at his new school that he's dating and how he can't believe someone so amazing would want to be with him. I was like, what the actual buck? And so I started seeing a friend of mine who I had a crush on because I'm thinking obviously we're not together anymore. Boyfriend finds out and loses his shit on me, saying he can't believe I do that to him. I was like, ook psycho. And I told him to never contact me again. He called me every single day, 20 times a day for months. Then finally got the picture that I didn't want to talk to him. That happened 7 years ago. He still tries to contact me every once in a while. Oh, and he married that girl. TLDR boyfriend of a year and a half just started dating someone else and freaked out when I did the same.